Hi there, it's Lon. I'm preparing for this coming Sunday, the 12th of April. It'll be the second Sunday in Easter, and we have two services, one at St. Mary's at 9 a.m. and one at St. Stephen's at 11:15 a.m. And this Sunday, Melanie Emels, one of our seminarians, will be preaching, so I'm going to leave the messaging stuff to her. I know that in John chapter 20, the feature character is Thomas, who I call the inquisitive Thomas or the seeking Thomas or the exploring Thomas. You can add your own name, but I think we'll hear on Sunday about the fact that the sort of general population interpretation of who Thomas was and is we're going to be debating that and talking in a different direction. And just in general, for all of the disciples, one of the things that I'd like to convey is that we can look to the disciples to help us understand our own inner beings. If you can take every disciple in their um, best moments and in their foibles and ask yourself what part of you lives out that character, I think you can find that really helpful. One of the things that I quite enjoy is reading about different types of spirituality. The little book I'm showing you, Following Jesus in the Footsteps of Francis, that refers to Francis of Assisi. And some of you that know me will know that Marin and I have been to Assisi a couple of times, and Francis is one of the uh, fathers of the church that I follow carefully and like some of the theological implications. So I thought that for today, I'd just do a very short reading for you from that little book. It's written by Father John Anglin, uh, Franciscan, a Franciscan monk himself, but it just gives a bit of insight into what we might think about Christ, which I think ties to what Melanie will talk about on Sunday. So it's about a theological principle called primacy. It does not simply mean that Christ is number one, as it were. All Christian theology basically states that. It refers more to the fact that in Christ all things are created and all things flow from him. That comes out of Colossians 1:15 to 20. So there are several implications from this perspective for those of us striving to follow a Franciscan or otherwise strong form of spirituality and Christianity. First of all, it gives direction to our prayer life because we can both appreciate the majesty of God, God's transcendence, if you will, and realize that God is the same at the same time, infinitely close to us, loving us and always communicating with us in spite of our sin and weakness. This doesn't mean that we don't strive to turn away from sin, but rather that having been touched by such tremendous love, we less and less desire to sin. A second implication for our spiritual journey is that we see the material world as good because it reflects the goodness of God and because it is all created in Christ right from the beginning. The third implication is that we don't see ourselves as bearing Christ in a godless and sinful world, but rather as pointing out the presence of Christ in all God's creation, even when that presence is not so obvious because of sin. So I give thanks to God for Francis and for his journey. He didn't do a lot of writing. He wasn't a strong writer of theology. Other people wrote what they observed from him. And he was a man who lived out his spirituality, and he lived it out in amazing ways. Some of it was close connection with nature. Some of it was close connection with other people, even when spending time in solitude. He was an amazing man of the church. And I think that for us, again, we look at people like him or Benedictine or others that we might engage in our spiritual journeys with and ask ourselves, what can I learn? How does this speak to my heart? So, to try to summarize what we just heard, if we put Christ in the center, if we always go to Christ in prayer, if we trust that Christ is both everywhere out there in the world, and I say that with italics, and then in close, inside our own very beings, and responsible for our personal salvation, at the same time, responsible for creation, all created people should point us to inclusivity and the welcoming of everyone. God's grace is so amazing that He accepts us as we are. He takes us, He slowly, and in some cases, maybe even instantly transforms us in ways that are so important. And yet, every day as our feet hit the floor, we can say, Christ is risen, and where will I go in the resurrection and in the incarnation of Jesus as a human yet divine character in my life? So thank you. That was a little bit of fun, and I hope that you come and worship with us on Sunday. If you're out in the wide world of the internet, which I know many of you are, greetings to people around the world that tune into this, people around Canada that tune into this. My sympathy is with you if you're in the prairie provinces where you're still suffering from snow. We here in British Columbia are very fortunate, and on these Wasanic and Coast Salish territories where I speak from, we have beautiful weather this weekend in particular. So God be with you. Always travel with God and listen carefully for the heartbeat of God. Thank you.